Dallas Mavericks select Cooper Flagg.
You have called the greatest Duke freshman ever. Really, this young man's thing, Jay. He's gifted in isolation.
Look at Moses Moody.
The first round of the 2025 NBA draft is officially complete, and I think it's safe to say that the landscape of the NBA has completely shifted. Some major picks were made and some franchises were changed, but as always, there are some winners and some losers from the first round of the NBA draft. Now, full disclaimer, this is all based on our own speculation. I'm not perfect and I can't see the future. However, that's not going to stop me from sharing my opinion. A lot of my speculation is based on the value of these prospects before the pre-draft process. Some teams made some great picks and some teams made some bad ones, but just because a team made a bad pick now doesn't necessarily mean that that player can't turn out to be a really good player down the line in the future. But we definitely didn't see a bad pick to start the draft, because the first winners of the 2025 NBA draft, in my opinion, are Cooper Flagg and the Dallas Mavericks. So before we get to the content, make sure you drop like, subscribe, and turn on our notifications to get the latest NBA news to your device. We dropped like 4 videos over the past 2 days, keeping you guys up to date with the latest NBA news, and we're going to keep you guys up to date on TikTok, Instagram, Snapchat, and X as well. All the links to that are in the description down below, and now that we get all that out of the way, cue the intro. Mic check 1 2 1 2. What's going on, everybody? After making arguably the worst trade in NBA history when they traded Luka Doncic to the Los Angeles Lakers at the trade deadline last year, the Dallas Mavericks were blessed with the #1 pick in the NBA draft in a year where one of the greatest draft prospects we've ever seen was declaring. To give you an idea of the hype surrounding Cooper Flagg, he's easily the second best prospect we've ever seen over the past decade. I put him right below Victor Wembanyama and right above Zion Williamson. And Cooper Flagg is a Dallas Maverick, and I cannot begin to express how big of a win this is for both Flagg and the Dallas Mavericks organization. Flagg is one of the most hyped up draft prospects in NBA history, and rightfully so. Flagg is a 6'9" hybrid wing who can score at will and also happens to be the best defender in the draft. Oh, and he's also 18 years old. Flagg is the youngest NBA draft prospect since LeBron James, and although nobody will ever match LeBron's draft hype ever again, Flagg is awfully close. From getting buckets against NBA greats during Olympic practices to dominating the college world, Cooper Flagg is looking to be a guaranteed superstar, the same way Victor Wembanyama was 2 years ago. Now pair a prospect of that multitude with a team that in all honesty can compete in the next few years, and you get a match made in heaven. Despite trading their future at the deadline, the Dallas Mavericks are a very well-built team. They have Anthony Davis leading the way after getting him back in the Luka Doncic trade. They have a few very good young big men in Derek Lively and Daniel Gafford. They have some very valuable veteran presences in the locker room, including Klay Thompson and Spencer Dinwiddie. And on top of that, they get Kyrie Irving back in a year after he signed a 3-year, $119 million contract to stay with Dallas long-term after his ACL tear last season. That is not a first overall pick type roster, but they got this pick due to a whole lot of injuries and a whole lot of luck, depending on who you ask. Before the draft lottery, Dallas had the 11th highest odds at the #1 overall pick at a minuscule 1.8%. But those odds hit, and now Cooper Flagg lands in a situation that every Western Conference team should be afraid of. Since 2000, only 4 #1 overall picks have made the playoffs in their rookie year. Markelle Fultz in 2018, but we're not going to count that. Derrick Rose in 2009, Andrea Bargnani in 2007, and Andrew Bogut in 2006. Flagg is in prime position to join those 4 players, and he very well may go a hell of a lot deeper than they did. We saw another perfect fit with the next pick, as the San Antonio Spurs selected Rutgers point guard Dylan Harper, making both Harper and the Spurs organization huge winners. Dylan Harper goes into the best situation possible for a point guard. He definitely won't be the starting point guard for the San Antonio Spurs because they currently have De'Aaron Fox under contract, which means there isn't a lot of pressure for him to produce right away. And he also goes to a team that is notorious for developing young talent. talent. Much like the Dallas Mavericks, the San Antonio Spurs jumped up a ton to this pick, entering the lottery with the 8th highest odds and a 6.3% chance at the 2nd overall pick. And boy, did they luck out. Dylan Harper is a 6'6" point guard who just so happens to be both an elite scorer and an elite playmaker. If I was to compare him to another player we've seen before, I'd say his playstyle is very similar to Cade Cunningham. Dylan Harper is set to be a perfect fit in San Antonio, alongside Victor Wembanyama and reigning NBA Rookie of the Year Stephon Castle, creating an elite young core that will compete for championships for a long time. Now bear in mind, there's a logjam at the guard position for the San Antonio Spurs, and as a result, Dylan Harper's rookie season might not be as statistically prolific as you'd expect. But I don't think it will affect Harper's development at all. If anything, I think it will help Harper's development. The Spurs have a history of being able to develop young talent really well, and Dylan Harper seems to be the next in line of a long list of San Antonio Spurs prospects that could be developed into an all-star. I do believe that Dylan Harper will play great basketball alongside Stephon Castle and De'Aaron Fox, and even if that doesn't work out, San Antonio is in a remarkable situation because they aren't fully committed to all three players. They could easily trade De'Aaron Fox at the deadline as an expiring contract for a haul of future assets that would make their young core even better. I personally don't think this will happen, but for those of you concerned about Harper's fit next to these two guards, don't be. Harper is going to be a perfect fit in San Antonio, and I wouldn't be surprised if he's competing with Cooper Flagg for the title of the best player in the 2025 NBA draft in a few years from now. Our first loser of the draft came at pick number 5, where the Utah Jazz selected Dylan Harper's teammate Ace Bailey. Now the Utah Jazz aren't losers in this case, they could actually be huge winners if this pans out, but Ace Bailey himself is a big loser here. Ace Bailey played a very dangerous game during the offseason, and we made a completely separate video on that earlier this week. But if you didn't catch that, let me bring you up to date. Ace Bailey declined workouts from many of the top teams during the pre-draft process, primarily because he wanted to go to a team where he could be the primary scoring option. It's very risky, and it definitely cost him millions of dollars, but Ace Bailey was trying to go to a situation where he can establish himself as a star in the NBA right away. And that makes a lot of sense, because if he went to the Philadelphia 76ers, he would have had a great opportunity to compete and potentially form a nice young core with Tyrese Maxey for the future of the Philadelphia 76ers, but in the meantime, he would have been the 4th scoring option if he went there, which could have harmed his development, so I could also understand the rationale here. So as a result, Bailey made it known that his preferred destinations were either Washington at number 6, New Orleans at number 7, or Brooklyn at number 8. But Danny Ainge doesn't care about Ace Bailey's preferred destinations, and as a result, Bailey is part of an organization that he seemingly doesn't want to be a part of at all. We'll see how this turns out, and we'll see if the drama gets the best of Ace Bailey, but if it doesn't, the Utah Jazz got an absolute steal. Ace Bailey might be the best overall scorer in the entire draft, and after putting up the worst record in the entire NBA last season, a pure bucket getter is exactly what Utah needs. There's a very good chance that if Bailey doesn't literally refuse to play for the Jazz, he becomes their best player in year 1. This kid is that good. His diva personality is certainly a little bit of a concern, and it did screw him over a little bit, making him our first loser. But when it comes to his skill on the court, Utah has the potential to come out of the 2025 NBA draft as huge winners. The Phoenix Suns are yet another team that walked out of the NBA draft as massive winners, because not only did they draft the best center in the draft in Kaman Maluk from Duke, but while they were on the clock at number 10, they decided that they wanted another former Duke center, making a blockbuster deal with the Charlotte Hornets that sent the 29th pick and a 2029 first for Mark Williams. They also sent Charlotte Vasile Micic, a player that they acquired in the Yusuf Nurkic trade back in February, saving them a whopping $8.1 million after exercising his team option. And this comes after a season where their biggest concern by far was quality play at the center position. Phoenix managed to acquire 2 centers in the span of minutes who fill that need to perfection. Kaman Maluk is an elite pick and roll big and will be an instant lob threat in a Devin Booker led offense. And now that Phoenix has Mark Williams to start for them, Maluk is in a position where he's able to properly develop and figure out his game without the pressure of being the only competent big man on this team. After being all but forced to trade Kevin Durant, Phoenix made out pretty damn good on draft day. Now, this trade is way more complicated and dense than you might think. I wanted to briefly touch up on it on our biggest winners and losers video because obviously Phoenix is a huge winner here, not to say that the Charlotte Hornets aren't winners either. We have a completely separate video doing a deep dive on this trade that's already been uploaded, and I'm going to leave a link to it at the end of this video in our end screen. And with the last pick of the lottery, the San Antonio Spurs made yet another pick that makes them massive winners when they drafted Arizona wing Carter Bryant. Now, is it just me, or if I'm a prospect and I hear my name called by San Antonio, I'm going to automatically jump for joy? Not only do they have a great track record developing prospects, but they have one of the most stacked young teams in the association. Now, Carter Bryant is a guy that we didn't see too much of in college, but his upside is through the roof. He's a defensive monster, has a consistent three-point shot, and gives San Antonio some much needed size and athleticism at the wing. Looking over his tape at Arizona, his game reminds me of Paul George when Paul George was coming out of Fresno State. And if he is anything like Paul George, the Spurs got the steal of the draft. Coming out of the lottery with Dylan Harper and Carter Bryant is absolutely insane. And I don't know if any team has a brighter future than the San Antonio Spurs at this point. A team that had a super weird draft was the Brooklyn Nets. They came into it with 5 out of 30 of the first round picks, and I still have them as draft losers. The first 3 picks are where they really lost me. With their first pick, Brooklyn select Igor Demine out of BYU at number 8. And this was the first pick of the draft where I was genuinely surprised. Then with their next pick, they selected French point guard Nolan Traore at number 19. Then 3 picks later, they selected Drake Powell out of North Carolina. And look, there's no question in my mind that there is a chance that these draft picks could pan out. But with the talent that was on the board at those 3 picks, I can't help but think that Brooklyn didn't get the value that those first round picks held. At number 8, players like Haman Maluk and Carter Bryant were all available. At 19, you still had guys like Asanul and Kasparas Yakuchinis and Jace Richardson on the board, who are all guys who could have easily been lottery picks. Newell and Richardson were even there when they drafted Powell at number 22. Instead of maximizing their value, they decided to reach for 3 underwhelming prospects, who in all honesty, they could have gotten with their later picks. Not a great draft for a team that had 1/6 of the entire thing. The last winner I have is my biggest winner outside of Dallas and San Antonio, and that's the Atlanta Hawks. They didn't even make their first pick until pick number 23, but the move that they made to get there and the player that they selected really set the Hawks' future up for success. During the lottery, the Hawks traded the number 13 pick to the New Orleans Pelicans for the 23rd pick and an unprotected first round pick in 2026, which happens to be the most favorable pick between the Pelicans and the Milwaukee Bucks. Yeah, they traded down 10 picks, but that pick could turn out to be insanely valuable. New Orleans was one of the worst teams in basketball last season, and I really don't see that changing this year. Milwaukee is also one Giannis injury away from being an unbelievably bad basketball team. Whether New Orleans or Milwaukee ends up being worse, I truly believe that this pick has the potential to be in the top 5 when it's all said and done. They already won this trade, and I haven't even mentioned who they took at number 23 yet. At 23, Atlanta selected Georgia forward Asa Newell. And like I said when I was talking about Brooklyn, he very well could have been a lottery pick. Newell is a hometown kid too. He grew up in Atlanta, played basketball at the University of Georgia, and now he gets to play basketball in his hometown for a Hawks team that looks to be set for a while. And those are our biggest winners and losers of this year's NBA draft. I don't think there were any significant losers, but I do like going over the draft and usually reflecting on these picks later. Now, I don't know if you guys heard, but Mark Williams just got traded to the Phoenix Suns. It was very shocking, and we have a completely separate video breaking it all down. I'm going to leave it in the end screen. I'll meet you guys there. I'm your boy Mike, and I'm dropping our mic until our next upload.